It's a full step-by-step guide from start to finish on how to create a visual like this in Cinema 4D and After Effects. We're going to start by creating our character in Mixamo, which is a free tool by Adobe. You just need an account to access it. Then in Cinema 4D, we'll take a few 3D models and using various tools, we can expand this into a larger scene. After that, we'll animate the scene and make sure that it loops seamlessly. This will be followed up by the lighting and atmosphere effects. And then we'll use an advanced method of rendering that separates our images into different layers and masks. Finally, in After Effects, we'll do the compositing and try out 3 different versions of our project. The goal of this class is to not just remake this exact visual as it is, but it's to give you guys a template for a workflow that's both very flexible and effective. If you get stuck on any particular lesson, then feel free to use the discussion section below and I will be able to help you out. But anyway, there's quite a lot to get through, so let's get started. Before we start with the main project, I would like to share with you some tips and tricks in Cinema 4D, which will help you to work faster. One of the most important things in Cinema 4D is being able to move around the scene quickly. So here are my favorite shortcuts for that. If you press the number 1 key on the keyboard and then click anywhere and move around, that's going to pan around the view. If you press the number 2 key and then once again just click and then drag your mouse left to right, this is going to zoom in and out to wherever you click. And if you press the number 3, that is going to rotate once again wherever you click. So those are really the 3 main ways to move around. You can pan, zoom, or orbit, or rotate. You could also do this with these icons up here. This one is for panning, zooming, and rotating, but these do not have the advantage of being able to click and target a specific area. And you also have to go all the way up over here every time you want to use this. And I think it's much easier to just use the keyboard shortcuts. You can keep everything in front of you. And here is another set of shortcuts. By default, we always use the selection tool. So we can select objects just like this, and then we can move them around using the 3-axis directions. So if we want to rotate, we can press R. That's going to bring up the rotation, and once again, we can use the 3 different axis directions to rotate. If we also hold Shift at the same time, this is going to lock the rotation increments to whole numbers so that you can quickly select an angle like 90 degrees just as easily by just rotating a few times. If you press T, that's going to bring up the transform, and if you click anywhere, you can just scale this up or scale down. And at any point, you can press the spacebar to jump back to the original live selection tool, or which in this case is also shortcut number 9 on the keyboard. And that's going to be quicker than always having to click up here once again. Our character is animated here, and it's being driven by this skeleton or joints, which you can see inside the character. By default, this is not visible. You have to go to Filter and under Joint, and that's going to enable so you can see. Another thing is I prefer to work in this time format where I can see the actual seconds rather than displaying in frames. So to do this as well, you want to go to Edit and Preferences, which always takes a few moments to load the first time you do this. Under Units, I changed my animation unit from their default frames to SMPTE, which displays in seconds like this. So the great thing about this is if I type in, let's say 10, it would just make my timeline 10 seconds. So it's much easier for me to visualize in seconds rather than frames. And also above that, you can still see the actual frame numbers. So this way you actually get to see both time displays, and I think that's better. Anyway, to continue, here is another tool which I use a lot in my projects. It's called Magic Solo. So this is a free plugin which is used to isolate particular objects as you are working on them. So let's say we get the character. If I click on this and I just want to work on the character, I can click Magic Solo, and now I can just see this object and its materials. And then when I'm finished making any changes I want, I can hit the icon again, and this is going to bring back everything else that's in the scene. So that's very useful in terms of just being able to focus on one particular object. Anyway, so this small plugin will be included in the class files, and I recommend checking out Nitroman's blog, who is the creator of this excellent plugin, and many others actually. You might find something you like there as well. Anyway, if you get this and to install it, you have to go to Preferences and open the Preferences folder. That's going to open this location where Cinema 4D has these folders. So you would just want to go to Plugins, and this is where you would put the Magic Solo folder for the plugin. Anyway, once that's done, you would just have to restart Cinema 4D and then go to Window and Customization, Customize Commands, and in this filter, search for Solo. And the Magic Solo plugin is right there. You would drag this into your interface somewhere, but of course I've already done this. So if I enable Edit Palettes, I can double click this to make it disappear because I already have it there. So anyway, I would close this down, and we have to save this layout, otherwise it will be gone the next time we launch Cinema 4D. So if we go to Window, Customization, we just have to save as Startup Layout, and the next time you launch, this icon will still be there. So I keep it in my interface like this because it's nice and easy to get to. Anyway, one more shortcut I will show you is to do with the camera. Let's insert one right now, and let's look through it. So if we click this gray box, it turns white, which means we are now looking through this particular camera. And let's say I was looking at a particular object or thing, and I somehow accidentally looked away, let's say a few times, and I end up somewhere completely random. I can press Shift, Control, and Z to only undo the camera movement. And of course, Control Z undoes other things that you may have done, but Shift, Control, Z will only reverse or undo the camera movement. So that's it. Keep those shortcuts in mind as you are working in Cinema 4D, because you'll be repeating a lot of these things over and over. If you know the shortcuts, then you can work much faster. There are two main ways to create our characters, and both of them are free tools by Adobe. You just need a free Adobe account in order to access this. So we're going to get our character from Adobe Mixamo, which is this website right here. It's a free tool by Adobe, and it's basically a library of characters and animations that you can use in your projects for free. If you go to this and go to the characters section, you can search for the type of character you want to use. For me, it's one of these male model characters, and I chose this David character to use as an example. And once I'm happy with that choice, I can go to animations, and this is where we can find a walking animation. So if I just search for that, we can see there are various animations to choose from, and you can see previews of these as well. There's quite a handful. The one I'm going to use for this particular animation is if I search for catwalk forward. It's this collection of animations which for some reason they use these like medieval characters to preview. Just kind of looks a bit funny. But anyway, if I go for catwalk forward 02, this was my preferred choice. It seems a bit more like just normal walk cycle compared to some of the other ones. You know, like this is a bit too animated almost. If I can use that term. Anyway, let's go back and search for that again. And right there. Okay, so we have a few things we can change over here. The overdrive controls the general speed of the animation. So if you lower this, you get a slow motion walk. But let's just keep that at the default 50, which is the normal speed. And character arm space is, as the name suggests, you can change the width of the arms. Obviously, you don't want it to look silly, so just probably keep that at 50 as well. And the other option is we can have the animation as it is, or we can have it in place where the character just does the walk cycle but doesn't move away. So we are actually going to download both of these animations. So let's start with the normal animation, which is just this small segment. I will hit download. And here, the only thing I will change is the frames per second. By default, it's set to 30. I'm going to lower this to 24. That's my preferred FPS for doing animations. It's also the film standard. So that's why I use that. Anyway, so the download will take a few moments to prepare, but once you've specified where it's going to be saved in the location, you just hit save, and then we can do the same for the in-place version of the same animation. So just remember, we need both of those, and this will make more sense as we get to the Cinema 4D stage in the following lesson. So let's just save this version. This is going to be catwalk forward in place. And that's it. A different method for generating our character is this other free application by Adobe called Adobe Fuse. And unfortunately, it's no longer officially supported by Adobe, so this may not be an option which is available to some people watching the class. But you know, in case you still have this, like I do, I never uninstalled it, so I still have access to this. You want to just start by, you know, in the assemble section. This is what the application looks like when you first open it. And over here on the right side, we have some preset models that we can pick from. It's a collection of male and female scanned models. So let's just configure one right here. If I choose this male scan number 4, I then just need to pick the corresponding other body parts to match what I have selected. So for this, it's male scan number 4. The order of this gets, you know, jumbled up each time for some reason. Next up, we can go to the customize section, and this works by either using the sliders over here in the various body parts. So, you know, you have arms, face, head, legs, and so on. Or you can actually just directly click on the body and just move your mouse. And that's another way to modify what that looks like. But this is supposed to be quite basic. We just need a simple character to use in our animation. So I'm just going to leave everything the same and move on to the clothing section, where I can then just dress up this character. So the final thing I will add here is some shoes. And that's it. I could even maybe add some hair if I wanted to, or some hats, eyewear. There's options for that. But this is fine. So from here, I can send this directly to Mixamo, and we will end up in the same place where we started by selecting our character. The difference is we will just have our character from Fuse rather than picking one from this pre-made library. Anyway, so if this is an option for you and you want to configure your character in Fuse, then go ahead and do that. And then when you're finished, you send this to Mixamo, and from then on, the process is the same. This will start by exporting the model to a temporary file, and then as you can see here, it's now sending this to the Mixamo server, and you just need to be logged into your Mixamo for this to work seamlessly. But as you can see here, it loads up, and it starts by automatically rigging the character, which is preparing it for the animation to be attached. And this can take a few minutes though, so just give it a moment, and I will skip ahead to when this is finished. And about a minute later, we have this. I can hit finish, and let's say use this character. So this will now overwrite what we currently have in the other tab, but that's okay. I can click animate, and here we can just search for the same animation that we previously selected. So I want the catwalk forward 02, and that's it right there. And I will just go ahead and save this version and the in-place version as well. Now this character's arms are actually a bit closer to each other, so I would maybe just widen the character arm space to about 60, just so the arms don't sort of clip into the torso here as well. But that's it. Once this is done, again, we just download at 24 FPS. And remember, we are saving the two versions, the one where the character walks away and the in-place version as well. So as you can see, it's quite easy to create and configure our character. We will take this into the next lesson and start in Cinema 4D. We now want to bring our character into Cinema 4D.